Hello students, today I am here with my new video on pollination in flowering plants, okay, and this topic is from second chapter of your NCERT book, that is reproduction in the flowering plants, okay. So in this video I am going to cover about different types of pollination, what are the importance of that pollination and what type of adaptation a plant should have to show such type of adaptation, okay. Okay, so first of all we are coming with the definition of the pollination. So the pollination is the process of transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of same flower or different flower of same species. Okay, so here we find two things, that pollination can occur either inside a same flower or it may be that two different flowers may be needed. But in both the condition, the flowers that are participating in pollination that must belong to same species. Okay. Now the second thing is that two different terms are being used. That is transfer of pollen grain. Why pollen grain? Because pollen grain contains male gamete. Pollen grain contains male gamete. Okay. And this male gamete present inside the pollen grain is transferred over stigma. Why? Because stigma is part of pistil and it will lead inside the ovary and ovary contains egg. Okay. So in that way ultimately the male gamete present inside the pollen grain will fuse with egg present inside the ovary. Okay. So through this point I will just like to tell you that in case of all the sexually reproducing angiospermic plants, sexual reproduction is completed in two steps, pollination and fertilization. Okay. So during pollination, pollen grains are deposited on the stigma, and during fertilization the male gamete present inside the pollen grain will fuse with the egg present inside the ovary. Okay. So now just see what are the different types of pollination. Okay. So basically pollination is of two different types, self pollination and cross pollination. Okay. Cross pollination is also called as genogamy and it do not have any subtype, but self pollination is of two different types. It is autogamy and getonogamy. What is the difference? The very first point is that in case of self pollination, if single flower participates in the pollination, it is called autogamy. But if two flowers participate, it is called getonogamy. But the two flowers that participate in the getonogamy, that must be present on same plant. It must be present on same plant. I will just show you the diagram. Just see here. Here we find two conditions. Here this one is a flower. This flower, the pollen grains are being transferred on the stigma of the same flower. Okay, single flower is involved and inside the flower, in the same flower, the pollen grains are being transferred on the stigma of the same flower. So in such condition, because यहाँ पर एक ही flower है, so both the male and the female sex organs, they have same genetic makeup. Genetically both of them are similar. Okay. Now the second condition we find that in second condition, in case of getonogamy, here what happens that we are finding two different type of, this is one flower, this is second flower. These two flowers are present on the same plant. Okay. And the pollen grain of this one flower, this is flower number 1, from here this is being transferred on the stigma of the other flower of the same plant. Parent plant is same. It means that here also both male and female, this is the male flower, this is the female flower, both male and female flower are genetically same. genetically same, okay, and because they are present on the same plant, that's why ecologically also they are same. Clear? Why I am saying this, that I will discuss you later on. In case of autogamy and heterogamy, there is only one difference, that in case of this is the autogamy, here we find that only one flower of the plant is involved during pollination, but in second one, heterogamy, we find that two different flowers of the same plant. First flower this, second flower is this, two different flowers of the same plant, between them transfer of pollen grain occurs. Okay. So, because both the plants, both the flowers are genetically similar, that's why this type of pollination, it is an example of self pollination only. Here also the same plant, one flower, here also same plant but two flower of same plant. Here written same plant, different flower. Okay. So, in both the condition, in case of self pollination, we find that both male and female sex organs, they are genetically similar. So, it is called a self pollination. But what about the cross pollination? Cross pollination also called a genogamy. So, here you see, we find here that these are two different flowers, flower number 1 and flower number 2. These two flowers are present on two different plants. They are not on same plant, but they are on two different plants, but these two plants must be of same species. If pollen grain of maize is being transferred on the stigma of the maize, then only it will lead to the cross pollination. If the pollen grain of maize is being transferred on the stigma of the wheat, it will not lead to the pollination. Okay. So, that's why two plants that are being involved in the pollination, they must be of same species. Okay. So, because here we are finding that two different flowers and two different plants are needed, that's why what happens, that we need some agent must be here, must be present. Here we are finding the insect. Okay. So, in case of self pollination and cross pollination, there is a difference, that self pollination may occur between either inside same flower or two different flower of same plant, but cross pollination always occurs between two flowers of two different plants of same species. Okay. So, now just let us see what are the adaptations of self pollination. What type of plants show self pollination? Is it that all the plants show self pollination? So, we are just going to see what are the adaptations of the self pollination. The very first point for the sex pollination, self pollination, that only such type of plants can show self pollination which are bisexual, that have both male and female sex organs present. Then it is called as, that is, this phenomena is called as bisexuality or monocliny, as in case of pea plant. We find that the pea plant is a bisexual plant, so it can show self pollination. Okay. But is it that all the plants that are bisexual that will result in self pollination? No. There is also one condition. It must always show homogamy. Even sometimes it happens that the flower is bisexual, but the male sex organ matures earlier than the female sex organ. Okay. So, male sex organ will produce pollen grain earlier. At that time, stigma may not be receptive, so it may not result in the self pollination. Okay. So, that's why for self pollination, along with the bisexuality, the plants should also, the flowers should also show homogamy, means maturity of both the sex organ must occur at the same time. Both of sex organs must mature at the same time. Okay. And the second next type of adaptation is the clistogamous flower. Clistogamous. In case of clistogamous flower, it's always, there is only self pollination. So, what are clistogamous flower? Some flower, they never open. they remain closed. As in case of Commelina, you find Commelina shows both clistogamous and chasmogamous flower. So clistogamous flowers are present inside the soil, and chasmogamous means the flower that can open, they are present in the air. So these clistogamous flower, they are closed flower, so because they do not open, that's why they cannot show cross pollination. Clear? So in case of clistogamous flower, every time they show self pollination. Example is Commelina, Viola and legume. Leguminous plants, all the pea plant, pea family plant, all of them, they show the self pollination. Okay. Now what are the advantages of self pollination? Because in case of self pollination, just now we have seen that it may occur inside the same flower, only one flower is needed. That's why what happens, there is no any agent for pollination is needed. Without any agent, this pollination results, and that's why always success rate of such pollination is very high, and it leads to the assured seed formation. Means pollination will result in fertilization, and fertilization will lead to the seed formation. So it means that the success rate of self pollination is very high. Next point is wastage of pollen doesn't occur. Why? Because no external agent is needed, that's why wastage of pollen doesn't occur. Okay. And the next point is that similar type of progeny is produced. It results in formation of pure line and homozygosity. Okay. So these are the advantages of the self pollination. But self pollination also results in some harmful effects also. What are the harmful effects? It doesn't produce variation. It doesn't produce variation. Why it doesn't produce variation? Because both male and female sex organs, gametes, have same type of genetic makeup. So that's why it results in homozygosity, and it doesn't produce any variation, as we know that the variation results in adaptation and better survival advantage. So that's why the plants produced by self pollination may result in inbreeding depression and homozygosity. Inbreeding depression means due to continuous self pollination, some of the qualities, vigor, fertility of the plants may get reduced. It is called inbreeding depression. Okay. So the next one is the cross pollination. Cross pollination, we have seen that cross pollination always results between two different flowers, and these two flowers must be present on two different plants. Sometimes there is a little bit confusion. Some people get confused between the getonogamy and the genogamy. Now just look here, getonogamy and genogamy. Why there is a confusion? Because in case of getonogamy also we are finding that two different flowers are needed. Here we are finding that from one flower these pollen grains are transferred on the stigma of the other flower. So here also two flowers are involved, but in case of getonogamy only one plant, these two flowers are present on the same plant. But in case of cross pollination, genogamy, we are finding that this is one flower plant and this is other plant, and this transfer occurs between two different flowers of two different plants. So in case of genogamy is called true cross pollination. Why? Because these two plants, this is plant 1 and this is plant 2. These two flowers, they belong to two different plants. So that's why the sex organs, male and female sex organs, are genetically different. So gametes will have different genetic makeup. These two flowers are not only genetically different but ecologically also different. They are present on two different plants. Clear? But in case of getonogamy, here we are finding that these two flowers are genetically also similar because present on same plant, and ecologically also similar because they are present on the same plant. Clear? So that's why geitonogamy cannot be called as true cross pollination. Sometimes people get confused because two different flowers are involved here. Clear? So I think now it is clear. So now next we were discussing about the adaptations of the cross pollination, means what type of plants will show cross pollination. So the very first point is that dicliny or unisexuality. Such type of plant which are unisexual, that can have only one sex organ. They can be either pistillate, means only female sex organ is present, or they can either staminate, means only male sex organs are present. Then because they have only staminate flowers are there, so they have only pollen grains present, so that must be transferred on the stigma of the other flower. Okay, so that's why the unisexual flowers, they always show cross pollination. Second is dichogamy. Dichogamy means even the flower is bisexual, it has both male and female sex organs present, but if both the sex organs do not mature at the same time, then what happens, that they have to depend on other flower for the pollination. So this condition is called as dichogamy, and it can be of two different types. If male organs matures earlier, it is called protandry. Pro means first, andry means androecium, means male sex organ matures earlier, as in case of salvia. And the second may be protogyny. If the female sex organ matures earlier, pro means first and gyne means gynoecium. So if the pistil matures earlier, as in case of mustard and all the crucifery family flowers, so then it is called as a protogyny. So in both the condition, the plant has to depend on the cross pollination. Second one is the next one is the chasmogamy, that we have just now we have seen in case of previous slide also I have shown you that in case of Commelina, that it has some flower that can open flowers are called chasmogamous. So chasmogamous flower, it always shows, most of the time it shows cross pollination. It's not that always they will show cross pollination, no, but for cross pollination the flower should always remain open. The clistogamous flower can never show cross pollination, but chasmogamous flower can show self pollination as well as cross pollination. Clear? But for cross pollination always the flower should open. Okay. So now the next one is the next adaptation of cross pollination is heterostyly. Now what is the meaning of heterostyly? Actually what happens, some type of flowers just like primrose, here we will find that the height of this style and the height of the filament, it varies in different flowers. Okay, in different flowers what happens, that the size of the filament and the size of filament as well as the size of the style varies. So now what will be the effect of this? Now just see here, I will just showing you. Suppose this is the flower, and this is your here you are finding that this is the style, and this is the filament. Above the filament you will find the anther. In one flower you are finding the height of this style is longer. In other flower of the same plant you can find that the style is smaller. This style is smaller and the filament is larger. Anther is present over here. So in such condition what will happen? In such condition it will be difficult to show the self pollination, because here in this condition the pollination can result in self pollination. It can result because stigma is here, it can fall on the stigma, but in this condition that stigma is present here, pollens are produced at this level, so it may not result in the self pollination. Okay, so in such condition it will have to depend on the cross pollination. So that only this is called as the heterostyle. Hetero means different style, size of the style is different in different flowers. Okay, then it is called as the heterostyle, as in case of primrose and the oxalis. Okay, next condition is called as the self sterility. It happens that sometimes the pollen grain of the same plant is not able to germinate on the stigma of the same plant. They are sterile for the same plant, stigma of the same plant. That is called a self sterility. When the pollen grain of such plant will be deposited on the stigma of other flower, then only they will germinate. They never germinate on the stigma of the same plant. So it is called as the self sterility. An example is grasses. In case of grasses, you can find that it shows the self sterility. Now the next one is hercogamy. Hercogamy means presence of barrier between the male and the female sex organ. Here you can find that this is the stigma. Just over the stigma in case of Calotropis, a barrier sort of structure is present. So this barrier will not allow the pollen grain to be deposited over the stigma. Okay, so this is called as hercogamy, that is presence of barrier between the sex organs. That is hercogamy. So here we are finding that over the stigma, the barrier is present. So that's why pollen grain will never be deposited over the stigma. Okay, so that's why these are the different type of, in such condition when the barrier will be removed only, then only the pollen grains will be deposited. So when the pollen grain of other flower will be deposited, at such condition the cross pollination may result. Okay, so now the next one, what is significance of the cross pollination? Cross pollination results in variation. Why? Because both male and female sex organs, they are genetically different, and that result in recombination, and that's why variation. And you know that the variation results in the adaptation and better survival advantage in case of progeny. So that's why the products of the cross pollination are always better than the product of the self pollination. Okay, and it produces better progeny than the parents. Now what are the disadvantages? Because cross pollination cannot occur without agents. It needs different type of agents of pollination like the birds, animals, wind, water. So that's why during that transfer large amount of pollen grains get wasted. So it is a wasteful process, and second, it is dependent on external agent. If external agents are not present, then cross pollination will not occur. Okay, large amount of pollen grain get lost. Undesirable characters also enter in progeny. So these are the disadvantages of the cross pollination, and cross pollination success rate is not 100%. In case of self pollination, we have studied that it results in assured seed formation, but cross pollination success rate is less. Okay. So thank you very much. Now after that I will come with the next video showing different agents of the pollination. Okay, thank you.